take advantage of it.
Roman hook. Headed. Batted in! BYU scores!
Let's get it. Let's get it. Rockin' Royal. Rockin' Navy. Know y'all with me. Let's get it, baby. Rockin' Royal. Rockin' Navy. Know you with me. Let's get it, baby. Boys just came back from their mission. We going crazy.
Welcome back to another episode of the Rock and Royal Soccer Show right here on KSL.com and the KSL.com Sports Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Sean Walker, your BYU beat writer for KSL.com, and just some guy who types words into the internet. Not very important at all, but I am joined by someone who is exceptionally important, former BYU women's soccer player, I believe 17-time All-American, if I remember, but who's counting? If I remember the math correctly, and first-time 100% acer of the LSAT, I think. Again, you can correct me if any of this is wrong. Carla Swensen-Haslam, you now know her from the ESPN Plus broadcast. Carla, thanks for joining me on this non-conference finale edition of the show. How you been?
Thanks for having me back. No, I'm doing well. I will say I did not get 100% on the LSAT. Just in case my employer, and my law school admissions looks at that. But that being said, I'm happy to be back, happy to be talking soccer. I do have to mention, today I am wearing my 100th anniversary of the tricolor, representing Colombia today. So we are ready to go. That's how we're going to start this week off, is representing the tricolor today and talking some soccer along the way too.
Hey, I'm always in favor of representing a little bit of Central America, especially Las Cafeteras in Colombia. I probably should have mentioned former Colombian international, Carla Swensen-Haslam. Yeah. Didn't you get called up by the U team a couple times and
Yep.
that kind of stuff?
Yeah, a long time ago. I'm out of shape now.
I was going to say I
can't run up and down the field anymore, but
yeah, I think that was 9 or 10 months ago. It was a little bit. So we won't say exactly how long, but it's been a few months. It's been a few months. Yeah, got to get back into shape for some of that stuff.
Yes, definitely. Having
Carla,
children
thanks for
is
joining
not-
me. Again, as always, we're dedicated here to your alma mater, the former club that you played for, BYU women's soccer, which wrapped up non-conference play this past weekend with their second straight in-state rivalry. I'm calling this one a derby. It's the Crosstown Derby. I think formally there was some branding involved, calling it the Crosstown Clash. I think just because it's soccer, we need a little bit of derby. And there's nothing better than the Utah County Derby between BYU, Utah Valley. Final score number 12, BYU 2, Utah Valley 0. Goals by Ellie Walbrook to become BYU's leading goal scorer once again, her fourth of the season. And then another first-time goal scorer in freshman Afton Perry gets on the books and opens her account in this to help the Cougs finish off non-conference play with a 5-1-1 overall record. I already mentioned they were ranked number 12 in the United Soccer Coaches poll last week. We'll see how that updates here once the new poll is released midweek ahead of Big 12 play. But let's just start pretty general, Carla. What stood out to you? You were on the call with this one with a friend of the podcast, Greg Rubel. One of the day we'll actually get him on the show there on ESPN Plus. But what stood out to you about this match? What did you kind of like the most? What are your biggest takeaways?
Yeah, I think it was a solid showing for BYU. In the first 10, 20 minutes, UVU, I felt played very well. And I thought, this is going to be a competitive match. And it was. But I feel after those first 10, 20 minutes, BYU adjusted. And I think started to fall into the flow of the game. I think they got some of the nerves out. I think both teams were feeling those nerves, just given the context of the week. And you're right, because there is that rivalry between the two teams, and it is a rivalry. There are some people that will fight me on that and be like, it's not a rivalry, and I say, yes, it is. The rivalry is because they are geographically so close to each other, and the second reason is because all of the players know each other. There were 4 starters for UVU who the year prior had been playing for BYU, and 5 players total I think of JC Wood, who didn't get the start, but was a big player for BYU, who was also coming off the bench and getting a lot of time. And then in addition to that, you have all these players that grew up playing high school together. So it very much is a rivalry, and you could feel some of those nerves before the game from both sides. But I think after the first 10, 20 minutes, BYU started to sink in a little bit more, started to play their own style of soccer. And from there, did a great job of building and were able to get the 2 goals to ultimately win the game.
Yeah, not just rivalry, not just friends, former high school teammates, former club teammates playing each other, former college teammates in the cases of some big-time players for UVU, quite frankly, players like Sierra Pennock and Ruby Hladek among those starters that moved from BYU to UVU and have kind of flourished in their careers since then, quite frankly. You had literal sisters lining up against each other as well. I didn't realize this until the day of the game. BYU's Ella Rustand and then her younger sister, Quinn, is now with Chris LeMay's side at Utah Valley as well. So not just some former friends, teammates, close associates, club teammates, summer teammates, if we really want to talk about Utah United from this past summer, but you have literal family members on one side of this rivalry or another. I have no problem calling BYU and Utah Valley a rivalry, and certainly not in women's soccer. I think it's 100% there and absolutely justified in so many ways. But I think you're right. I think because of that, both of these teams started a little bit tight. Chris LeMay told us after this match that he didn't think his team really looked like themselves. He couldn't totally speculate on all of the reasons. There were probably, quite frankly, a variety of reasons, some off the field, some on it in a lot of ways. BYU did a nice job, especially kind of midway through the match, of sort of forcing UVU to play ways that they don't like to play. I think you got to give Jen Rockwood and her side some credit for that. But both teams looked a little bit out of sorts early on in some ways, and it kind of felt like a game where maybe the Cougs were going to get a lot more chances than they could ultimately finish, until suddenly they started finishing a lot of chances, starting with Ellie Walbrook's goal to open the scoring some. She gets her 4th of the year, and let's just go big picture, because you've called a whole bunch of her games now, Carla. I called Ellie Walbrook arguably BYU's most important player this season, and I don't necessarily want to get into a discussion of best or most talented or most experienced or even most experienced, that kind of thing. But I feel like through 7 games of non-conference play, she's proving to be maybe at least one of, if not the most pivotal players on this side. Like this kind of feels like Ellie's team in a lot of ways. Do you agree or disagree?
That's a great question. I do agree that it is her team in that sense. And I think that's a good thing. I don't say that as a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because she very much is a leader and very much encouraging of her teammates and very much leads them in a way that invites them to be better. So it very much is her team. And I think that's a good thing because she is a good leader out there. At this point, BYU needs goal scorers. Their defense is holding pretty steady. They were able to get the shutout against UVU, and they haven't been letting in a lot of goals. They let in 4, if I'm correct. I have to go back and check my stats, but so they're doing really well defensively, and they're holding. I think their midfield is probably where they are the deepest. And so that final piece is just getting goals. And that was the issue they had against Arkansas, was that they just weren't able to get a goal and thus left the Razorbacks in it. I think that game was the most telling. And so to be able to now, bounce back, they played against Utah State, were able to get, a couple of goals. And then now against UVU, that is the biggest issue as they get into conference plays. Can they score? So to your point, I think Ellie is going to continue to play a very important role because she is the one that they look at to get some goals on the sheet.
Yeah, 100%. I also didn't expect to see Afton Perry opening her goal scoring account as well with a laser beam, just an absolute rocket, a dagger of a shot. Really kind of helped put the game away in a lot of ways. Put BYU up for the entirety of the second half in the most dangerous lead in soccer, as they say. Although I quibble. I don't love the 2-0 is the most dangerous league in soccer trope. I think there's a lot of inaccuracies about it, quite frankly, but we'll go with it just for the sake of cliches. and that sort of thing. What did you like about Afton's goal? And I will mention this: she's like the fourth or fifth first-time goal scorer BYU's had this year. Obviously, a lot of that is because of the sheer volume and sheer number of freshmen that they're playing, Afton being one of them. But what did you like about her goal in particular, and just kind of that setup and that play, and maybe that as a potential confidence builder for a rising player who I think it's fair to say Afton Perry's best days are in front of her.
Yeah, I agree. I think Afton Perry very much merited, the playing time that she got and that starting position that she got because she's been playing so well. And you said it perfectly. It was a beautiful shot. It was a laser beam, up and over the goalkeeper. So you give her credit for just having a great shot, definitely. But the thing that allowed her to get that were her runs off of the ball, allowed her to have space for when she did receive it. So, if you think of soccer and basketball, those triangle passes play such an integral role in getting shooting players space. And, we give a lot of credit to the shot, and we should, but it's the fact that she had so many triangle passes leading up to receiving the ball that when she did get it, she had lots of space in front of her. And that's a forward's, biggest dream. A midfielder's biggest dream is to receive the ball into space, because when you have space, that's when you can really focus on getting a good shot because you're not rushed. So I give her full credit for an incredible shot, but I think the thing that was most impressive were just her runs to get into space and to get open and to get the ball frequently. There were many times in the game I felt against UVU where Perry found herself stretching out wide. And sometimes she didn't get the ball, but what it did is it pulled a UVU defender towards her, and that opened up the seams for Ellie Walbrook. It opened up the seams for some of those other forwards that later subbed in and were super subs and brought some high energy. And so even though she may have not gotten the ball, she made all of her teammates' lives easier because she was making runs that created space for everyone.
Yeah, she's one of the most active players on the soccer field, whether that leads directly to a goal or not. Just her energy, her kind of volatility in some ways. And I say that as a 100% a compliment. She's all over the place in midfield. Sometimes she's here, she's there. She does a lot. Even off the ball. I think to see her get a goal was certainly very rewarding for Afton right there. Also, another shutout, back-to-back shutouts now on Southfield. Back-to-back shutouts. BYU still hasn't allowed a goal in games where Kate Denny starts at center back. We should probably make note of that. Peyton Collins been very good in goal. Obviously, Izzy Stratton, the other city center back in there. There's something about this defense that's coming together and clicking very well in a spot, Carla, where we talked about on the show earlier. But I think we're coming up on the midway mark of the season, and this defense, all of the question marks aside, replacing the goalkeeper and kind of some injury issues or injury concerns out there, has been maybe the strength of this BYU team through 7 games of non-conference play, right?
I think so too. As I looked at this team in the preseason and exhibition matches, I remember thinking that as well, that the defense is probably the first thing that's been solidified, which is a good place to be. Here's the other cliche, right, is that defense wins championships. And I think that's the first thing you need to solidify is that defensive line. And so you're right, even though there has been some changes, Avery Frischnecht is going to be gone for a few games as she nurses an injury. And being able to bring Kate Denny and being able to bring in some other defensive players to still, hold the fort. There's another cliche. We're just full of them today. Hold down the fort, I think, is one of the reasons that I predicted at the very beginning of the season. You can, the listeners can go all the way back to Rock and Royals' first episode back in August. And that is why I felt so confident about this BYU team having a good season. Now I don't know how deep they'll go, but I think they will contend for a final in the conference championship. And maybe I'm getting ahead of you because perhaps that's, the next thing we're going to talk about next is conference play. But I do think this is a team that will have a good season, a successful season. And I attribute it 100% to that defensive line being so solid.
Well, that's why you're perfect for this job, because in the biz we call that a transition. Let's transition a little bit from non-conference play to the start of Big 12 play now. I think we've learned a lot about this BYU team. We've learned a lot about their defense in particular. We've learned a lot about Ellie Walbrick coming back. I think she's officially back from that injury. Knock on wood and knocking on wood over here. I think it was really good to see Mackenzie Vance back as well.
Mhm.
She's getting more and more minutes and more confident on the ball, coming off of her offseason injury. I think BYU is figuring out new ways to score to replace the production of a prolific player like Ali Fryer very well. And it now all jumps up a notch starting this Thursday. That's September 18th, an 8 p.m. kickoff on the road at Sun Devil Soccer Stadium in Tempe, Arizona, as BYU opens Big 12 play at Arizona State. It's maybe some would say a jump up in competition from the non-conference schedule, although maybe not, because this team has challenged itself very well. Wins over the likes of Minnesota, UCLA, Auburn, their lone loss on the year, an Arkansas team that's ranked in the top 10 right now. I don't
Yeah.
think that's anything necessarily to sneeze at. Do you feel like non-conference play has prepared this team? Again, another exceptionally young team, 9 freshmen, 3 or 4 freshman starters, depending on the day, at least 7 of them playing a critical role on this team from game to game. Do you feel like that's kind of helped prepare them for what they're going to see in the grind and the rigor of Big 12 play now as we kind of turn that page?
Yes. Yes. I do feel like BYU is prepared for conference play. And I would give it to you straight. You know, when we went in last season, I had a lot of questions going into conference play of how BYU is going to compete, and they did, you know, pretty well given their circumstances of injuries and young players. This season, I feel far more confident in telling you that I think BYU is fully prepared for conference play, and a lot of that is because of their non-conference schedule and how challenging it was. And how different it was. The teams that BYU played in non-conference play all played very different styles of soccer. And that's good because once they get into Big 12 play, the teams they're going to play all play very different styles of soccer. I don't think there's going to be a drop in the level of competitiveness going into the Big 12. But I also don't think it's that much of a jump either. So I think BYU is in a really good place right now where they are prepared, you know, nursing an injury here or there, but they are, I think, very prepared physically for the matchup. I think strategically, I think they're prepared to go into conference play and do well. And then last is mentally. I think this team does very well under pressure. And I say that especially for the freshmen who are young. They seem so calm and so composed. This may be the most composed freshman group I've ever seen come out of BYU. There have been talented players, right? So we're not even talking about like talent necessarily, but even though they are talented. But you see what I'm saying? Like, if we're just talking about just composure, just being level headed, this might be the most level headed freshman group I have ever seen, at least in the years that I've been calling, come into BYU, because that's the thing with a freshman is you're just not level headed. You're young, you're inexperienced. And so BYU's had a lot of freshmen who have come in and have even become All-Americans and are so talented. But this freshman group in 2025 is so composed. It's absolutely insane to me. And so even though they're so young, I feel fully confident in them, you know, going into conference play and doing really well.
Yeah, and I think part of that composure is just this is a freshman class that's played in a lot of big games, from high school state championships to state cup finals, Utah, California, across the country where a lot of them come from. They've played in national tournaments on the club scene, ECNL finals or championships. Some of them, like they've played in really big moments. And obviously, youth soccer and high school soccer, there's another step up when you get to the college game, and there's an adaptation period and kind of warming into that. But this is a group I think that's played in some of the biggest moments to their young soccer career so far. I don't think they're scared. Like, I don't think they're scared by a challenge. I don't think they're scared to step up. And I think we're starting to see that kind of play out on the pitch where they're like, hey, this is the natural next step. Now it's just time to go and meet it. The natural next step is also Big 12 play. Again, bringing it back around to conference play. We've touched on it some this year. I think this is probably a good time to maybe talk about it a little bit more, extrapolate about it a little bit more. This BYU team also has a very good Big 12 schedule to go into with 9 freshmen, 7 or 8 of them playing crucial roles on this team, as many as 3 or 4 starters, all that stuff we're talking about. The Big 12 schedule makers really did Jen Rockwood quite the favor with this league schedule. I don't think there's any other way to say it. We're going to be pretty open about it. Not having to play TCU, not having to play Texas Tech on the league schedule, those 2 teams is kind of your skip teams. I think that's really important. Those are 2 of the better teams in the league. Kansas is also looking like kind of a very fast riser. They're now ranked inside of the top 25 by the United Soccer Coaches poll. But BYU also doesn't have to go to Lawrence this year. That game is at Southfield at the end of October, Thursday, October 23rd as well. So I'm not saying there aren't challenges on this schedule. I think teams like Oklahoma State and Baylor are going to be significantly better. I think starting with Arizona State will be a good challenge to kind of start with. Obviously, that game against the University of Utah in Salt Lake City on October 30th, that's always a tough rivalry right there. So there are still landmines, there are still challenges. I'm not calling on this BYU team to go undefeated through conference play, but by and large, I think there were a lot of kind of benefits that they got from their Big 12 schedule, whether it was from the league office or the schedule makers, or just sort of how the cookie crumbled in terms of year over year scheduling principles and that kind of a thing. It has maybe one feeling pretty confident at what this BYU team can do when you throw it all together and you look at what the Big 12 is now and just kind of progressing towards that conference tournament, right?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, maybe the cynic in me says it was done purposefully in hopes of having a BYU TCU final, that you'd have them in separate brackets during the tournament play and that they would play each other in the final. But again, that's just the cynic in me.
That would be good for ratings.
That said, like that it was purposely done thinking that here are 2 teams that will likely play in the finals. How do we keep them from hurting each other's points and keep them so that they can be in separate brackets as the top seeds and play each other at the end? But I don't know. And obviously we cannot disregard Texas Tech, as they are incredibly talented, incredibly athletic, and returning so many of their players who were injured last season and are now going to be returning. So it will be a difficult tournament. It'll be a difficult conference play, but I do agree with you that this is probably the best schedule BYU could have asked for as far as conference play. And you're right, the fact that I don't have to travel to West Virginia makes a huge difference. They didn't have to do that last year either, and I think that makes a big difference. And so I'm with you. I don't think I will say BYU goes undefeated, but I think if they do lose, it'll only be 1. I think they will have a good, next 2 months as they prepare to go into tournament play. And by then, we'll hop on the show in 2 months and I'll have a better idea of where the tournament's going to be and we can offer some predictions. But all in all, I think it's a BYU team that's going to do very well in conference play. And I would not be surprised if they went undefeated.
Yeah, in a league that's as cross-country as the Big 12, limiting cross-country travel, I think, is important for all teams, not just BYU, but for every team in the league. BYU's only got to make that trek once, and it's not until Monday, October 27th, an 11 a.m. Mountain Time kickoff, so at UCF in Orlando. That's their only two time zone trip this season, or their only one in conference play. Actually, I'm just reminding myself real quick, it is their only one overall, because I think Minneapolis, when they opened the season at Minnesota, they're on a Central Time, so it's the only time they had to travel 2 time zones away from Provo. That's a big deal. That's a massive deal. Again, I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, although it might be. I'm not saying it's a setup, although it might be. But I do think in 3 years in the Big 12, this is probably the most favorable draw in a lot of ways that I think BYU has gotten. Of course, the second you say that, something weird happens. BYU opens the season this Thursday night. Maybe they go and lose 3-0 to Arizona State or something like that, and all of a sudden they're kind of trying to dig out of the hole entirely. So if you're
anything can happen, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you're players, if you're coaches, you just got to focus on kind of one game at a time and progress and move forward and everything. But I really like where BYU's at right now. 7 games into the season. I really like where they're at going into into conference play. And I think this is a team that, quite frankly, can do damage the rest of the year, get back into the NCAA tournament. And then you see what happens. You see what goes from there. For a team that lost what they did last year, that brought in so many new faces, I think just being back in the NCAA tournament picture, being back, potentially contending for a Big 12 title in a year like this, I think it just speaks volumes to the program and kind of where Jen Rockwood has this program in general right now to kind of contend year in and year out. I'm not saying this was supposed to be a rebuilding year, although I'm not necessarily saying that either. I think it's been a pretty remarkable job by the players and coaching staff so far. One of those former players is Carla Swensen-Haslam, former BYU soccer star, current ESPN Plus soccer analyst. You can follow her on Twitter, follow her on Instagram, especially follow her on Instagram. She needs to be a little bit more active over there. So
Yeah,
Carla.swen.haslam, I believe, is the handle. We need to pump up some of those Instagram numbers. So if you're listening to this, if you're watching this,
the viewers will be so disappointed. I haven't been on Instagram for a bit, but we'll get back there. I'm active on Twitter, though, on X. So feel free. We'll do all the soccer updates. I do more of my soccer updates there for the soccer fans.
That's true. She does a great job over there on X. You can also follow her on LinkedIn, where she's writing all of her pre-match and post-match reactions over there on LinkedIn, which, by the way, until you started doing this, Carla, little secret, I had no idea that you could essentially blog on LinkedIn. I had no idea that was a thing at all. So maybe go connect with Carla on LinkedIn, and then you can see all of her writing over there as well.
Thank you,
Carla,
Sean.
anything else? Yeah. Anything else as we close out conference play and kind of turn the page towards and make this a Big 12 soccer pod for the next several weeks?
No, I think you hit on everything, Sean. You did a great job. I think it's important to note that this will be the end of the home game stint for BYU. It's pretty rare to be able to have 5 home games straight. And BYU, I felt like, did a good job of making the most out of it, getting as many points of it as possible, really learning from it. But now things are going to get difficult, that they're going to be on the road. And so that's something for the fans to consider, is BYU's now going to be back and forth on the road, back home, on the road again. And that's going to, heighten the stakes a little bit. We'll have some freezing cold games at South Field, so prepare for those. But aside for that, I'm excited for conference play to start, and I think it'll be fun to watch them on the road as well.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be along here for you the whole way. Check us out on Instagram. Speaking of the Instagram, at Rock and Royal Pod, if you can. If you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening to this, go check us out on YouTube at Rock and Royal Pod. We're putting the entire video, fresh faces and all. You can see the Cafetera Anniversary Edition jersey that
100 years of Colombian Federation soccer.
It's fire. It's really fire. We may need to post a photo of it on Instagram too.
Yes.
Maybe I'll screenshot that as well, and we can post that with some of the show notes. But thanks for joining us once again, guys. And as always, so long, and thanks for all the fish.
Let's get it. Rockin' Royal, rockin' Navy, know y'all with me, let's get it, baby, rockin' Royal, rockin' Navy, know you with me, let's get it, baby.